All right, there's Rick Spielman, the cartoon version of Rick. Rick and Ryan, they went on a pro day tour together. They were in Columbus to check out CJ Stroud at Ohio State, then made the trek down to Bama's pro day to check out Bryce Young, then back to Kentucky for Will Levis, and Gainesville capping off their pro day tour to see Anthony Richardson. And Rick, I heard that you and Ryan rented a convertible and you were rolling around together. Is that why you're, yeah.
That hair in the wind. Ryan doesn't have hair, but your hair in the wind, I could still picture that.
Yeah, no, it was nothing but CBS. When you're sitting there and traveling, we had a private jet to get everywhere we needed to go to. We had a convertible. It was, we didn't even go to the pro days. We just enjoyed nice dinner and wine at night.
You're just on a vacation.
Yeah, it was great.
All right, so we have Rick and Brady Quinn here to talk about all of the top quarterbacks in this year's draft class and kind of do a pro day roundup. So we're going to start kind of in the order of your trip. So you were in Ohio State seeing CJ Stroud pro day. I know you saw him throw at the combine as well. When you were in Columbus, Rick, did you think that he was kind of building on what you saw from the combine, or what were your big takeaways?
Yeah, I thought he had the best throwing session that I saw at a combine workout, and that just carried over to his pro day. And you can see the release. You can see how his feet and arm is all coordinated and what he was doing. You can see how accurate he was when he was rolling to his right and left, and he just put on a show. But you're sitting there watching CJ, but then he's throwing to this receiver that's going to come out next year.
That's what I was going to ask you. I said, I know
and it's not
Stroud, but there was another star at this show, right?
Yeah, no, and we're sitting there and you're trying to focus in and hone in, and we got to do all this stuff with CJ, and you can see here how quick his release is and how accurate of a thrower he was. But you're watching this guy named Harrison Jr., and he just stole the show all day. And even Smith and Jigba that we watched as well had a great pro day. But I think he really is solidifying himself as maybe the top quarterback in this draft, and that's just continued through this pre-draft process.
You know, these workouts are all scripted, right? I mean, just from being in that position, you know, you're preparing, you've thrown to these guys, at least in the case of CJ Stroud, at least for a year with Marvin Harrison Jr., if not a couple, and then Jackson Smith and Jigba, his entire college career. And you start to develop a bit of chemistry, rapport. Everything's scripted, you know what to expect. It's such a long departure from actually playing quarterback. So when you go to these, you talked a little bit about what you're looking for, but how do you deem it successful versus not in your mind? What are specifically the things you're looking at saying, this is what I want to see him do today?
Well, we'll come up with one that I didn't think do that here shortly. But, you know, but what I thought was at the combine where he never worked with any of those receivers, he was the most accurate thrower there at the combine this year. And I know it's all timing and, you know, you're trying to get the ball out of your hand before the receiver gets out of his break. Right. But he showed that at the combine. He showed that here. And I think when you go to these pro days and you see them work with their own receivers that the guys they're used to working with, it should elevate and take it to the next level, and I think he did that.
Yeah, I think the only thing that if you looked at the tape of C.J. Stroud, you get concerned with anything is all of the stuff that he's been asked to do, the combine, pro day, you knew he was the most accurate. At least I always felt like he was. You knew he had all the intangibles, the arm strength, everything else you're looking for. I think the athleticism, he showcased that too. Probably versus Michigan, you saw some of that, and definitely versus Georgia. It's just the discrepancy when it gets hit. You know, and you can't really mimic that so much in a pro day and obviously at the combine either. That was the difference that I would always see in the tape, and whenever we watched him throughout the course, in particular this past year, was when he would get hit in games, the accuracy comes down, the eyes come down a little bit, he navigates the pocket a little bit different. That's the only question mark of if he goes to one of these teams that's selecting early, he's going to have to overcome some of that. But that's really the only weakness that I see in his game.
Yeah, but he, you know, and you watched him in a Georgia game, and he took some hits there, but all of a sudden he started using his legs. And then you ask yourself, and what they're asking, the teams are asking themselves in the draft meetings is, why didn't he do this all the time?
His entire career.
Right. Why did he just do it now? Because all of a sudden, if he did not play the way he did in Georgia, there's no question he's behind Bryce Young. But because of what you saw in Georgia, that has moved him right up there, and it's a big debate in those draft meetings right now on who's going to go first overall.
Is that a struggle for you if you're the Carolina Panthers? You're drafting #1 overall, and you're saying, well, there's that one game, though. But you look at his entire body of work. How do you go about differentiating between that one game where he showcased everything he's capable of versus everything else you saw throughout the course of his career?
A lot of those will be answered in those meetings that you have privately with him.
Private workout, I
Yeah, and private workout, and why'd you do this, and why didn't you do this when we were watching tape. And when we bring quarterbacks in, we'd pull a couple of good plays, but we'd pull a lot of their bad plays up. And we would show them, and what were you thinking here? Why are you going here when this guy is wide open, yet you're forcing it in here and you threw an interception? Or why didn't you use your legs better here and use your athletic skill set? So a lot of those questions will be answered in these private workouts and these private meetings. So Carolina will have a pretty good idea of the reason why he didn't show all through his career when he showed in that Georgia game.
Really just testing his decision-making, kind of like if you're Rick Spielman and Ryan Wilson, if you go to Bahama Breeze when you're in Gainesville for dinner. Is that the best decision you really could make?
It was, because it was only 2 minutes away.
Jacqueline would know, though.
I know. I said you should have went to the Swamp for dinner if you were the restaurant, of course.
Yeah, Bahama Breeze was 2 minutes away from where the hotel was.
All right, so Ryan has C.J. Stroud going #1 overall in his latest mock, but of course it's been Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud. It's been back and forth in the conversations. You guys went to Bama there to see Bryce Young at his pro day. He obviously didn't participate in the drills at the combine, putting his eggs all in one basket there. What did you take away from his production from Bama's pro day, Rick?
Yeah, no, I thought he had the best workout all of them all. And for a 5'10" quarterback, his release, and Brady, you know, when guys are short, you try to see what the release point is, and his release point is up over here. That's why he never gets any balls batted at the line. And he has a great feel in the pocket how to find open windows to throw through. So he showed all that. The one thing that was really impressive at his pro day was he could put touch with velocity on it. So it wasn't floating balls, it wasn't 90-mile-an-hour fastballs, but he can also throw deep. He can throw on deep in routes, and you can see that velocity, but yet there's touch going over the linebackers' heads. So I thought he had the best pro day out of everyone we saw.
We always called it a two ball, right? It's a ball with a little bit of arc and pace. It's not obviously the fastball you're throwing. It's not the deep shot with a lot of trajectory. It's something in between. It's over that first layer of defense, but before the next layer of defense when you're throwing into windows. Bryce Young showcased that his entire career. The other thing you kind of talk about, everyone's making a big deal about the height. He's 5'10". You touched on the release point. We also have to take this into account. This young man's played at the highest level, not only in college at Alabama, in the SEC, arguably the best conference in college football. He's dealt with the height issue and playing from the pocket from his time there. Go back to his days at Mater Dei. Mater Dei is one of the most legit programs in high school football in California. He had guys who were 6'3", 6'4" offensive linemen and big defensive players he was going up against back then. He's always had to deal with it. It's not going to be any different in the NFL. He'll be able to adjust and adapt.
And the one thing that's unique about him, the stage is never too big, whether it's a national championship game, whether it's a conference game, championship game. And he decided, as you alluded to, put all his eggs in one basket. So there was a lot of pressure on him to perform at that pro day, and he passed the test with aces.
The only thing I wanted to ask you in regards to him, because we both feel the same. I mean, when you watch Bryce Young's tape, I mean, there's not many questions you have. Everyone's just really questioning the size. Can he do anything at this point in your mind to go any higher as far as what he's capable of or what he could be at the NFL level if you're one of the evaluators looking at taking Bryce Young? Because it feels like with C.J. Stroud, between the Georgia game and now to his pro day, he's obviously been a guy that maybe wasn't viewed as the #1 overall, and now people are saying, at least the money's saying this too, maybe he's going to be the #1 overall quarterback taken.
Yeah, I think that and everything that I'm hearing out there is when he's in these meetings and he's going through defensive schemes, offensive schemes, and teams are putting their offenses in, he's acing every test on that standpoint. But he's already at the highest level. To me, he's the best quarterback in this draft. So everybody else is chasing him, and he has done nothing to go down. I think he is the top and has stayed at the top.
All right, so Bryce Young, we have them 1 and 2. Let's talk about now the Will Levises, the Anthony Richardsons when it comes to the draft here. So Will Levis, Rick, you've talked about his arm. You've said he might have the best arm that you've seen when you were in Lexington there. What did you like from his pro day?
What I liked is that he's a big quarterback. He's wound tight now, which I mean his upper body and his lower body. Go to his Twitter page and see, yeah. But I don't know if I want that in a quarterback. But he had the strongest arm, the best velocity out of all the quarterbacks that we've seen. He can move. He's a very good athlete for his size. I guess the biggest question that I had was, can he put touch on the ball when he has to? And everything was a 90-mile-an-hour fastball. And when you had some of the short and intermediate throws that required touch, his accuracy fell off. So I think that's the biggest thing that he has to work with. You just can't throw 90-mile-an-hour fastballs all the time. It's like Major League when the Wild thing came in. Sometimes a bit outside, you know, and there were some throws there that were a bit outside. A couple of scouts on the sideline there ducked, but there's no question about his arm talent. But it just seemed like everything was forced. Like when you watch CJ, when you watch Bryce, it was just so fluid. It seemed so easy to them. This one looked a little more forced when you watch it in person.
There's a difference between passers and throwers. CJ Stroud, Bryce Young are passers. They can articulate the arm, they can shape throws, they can fit balls into certain windows. I think Will Levis is still working on that transformation from being a guy who throws the ball and has got an extremely strong arm and incorporating some of that touch with that like two ball we talked about before. And it reminds you a lot of the criticism that people had of Josh Allen when he first came out. People called him inaccurate. They said that's all he threw was fastballs. So you can see why he would be tantalizing a bit because of the size, the athleticism, the strong arm. Again, my concern is something that you touched on. It's just the inaccuracies or the inconsistency with his accuracy at all three levels. It doesn't matter if it was short, intermediate, or downfield this year. He really struggled. Some of that could have been due to injuries in the offensive line and the pressure, some with the offense. It'll be interesting to see where teams go with this. The most interesting part about this particular player, though, is Ryan Wilson in this latest mock draft has him going to the Minnesota Vikings at number 23. So I'm not sure what we do have to make of that.
Not so fast yet. Let's see what happens.
You need to talk to Ryan about that one.
All right, let's talk about Anthony Richardson. Dude's like 6'4", 240 and some change here. Obviously the physical.
Also very ripped up, Rick. No one's talking about that, but he's pretty well put together, too.
But he's more fluid and more flexible in his upper body compared to Will Levis.
More yoga, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm just saying he just looked more fluid throwing the ball. It was funny. The offensive linemen were working out and they were doing their drills at Pro Day, and he started warming up in the back of the end zone, and everybody started to gravitate down this way. The one thing you want to notice in this is how easy the ball comes out of his hand. And Brady, I'm going to ask you this question. When he took shotgun snaps, he never put the laces into his fingers. Yeah. He just threw, however, and the ball looked like it was a Nerf ball in his hand. He had such huge hands. But this guy showed everything that CJ Stroud showed, that Bryce Young showed, is that he can put touch on a ball with velocity. He was an accurate thrower. I think he ended up with a 75-yard ball in the air, rolling to his left and throwing out. All the physical tools were there. He may be the most physically gifted athlete out of all these quarterbacks coming out.
There's no doubt. He's got the highest ceiling of all these guys. I mean, he could end up being one of those generational talents you see at the quarterback position. To me, it just comes down to processing. He only started 1 year. When you put on the tape, you see some inconsistencies in the way he goes about reading a defense. And at a pro day, you're just not going to be able to see that. But that being said, I'm curious because it became a little bit of a social media, I don't know if it was a highlight or going viral, but Will Levis hit the top of the indoor, then Anthony Richardson does it. I mean, is that impressive to you as an evaluator?
No, it depends on how high their ceiling is at the indoor.
I was like, maybe they need to build a bigger indoor. I don't know that Florida, Kentucky, you want the recruits to know they got a low indoor like that.
Yeah, no, they have some low indoor roofs there where you can't punt in those, so you're not taking it. Hell, you can throw it up and hit the rafters.
Thank you, Rick.
I asked Rick about that when they were there, and his main takeaway was that Florida needs a new facility, a new practice facility. That's what he had to say. So.
Just a higher roof. They got a beautiful practice facility.
Yeah, they've had good special teams, but you want to be able to punt inside every day, one of those rainy, thunderstorm days.
Yeah. Of course, there's a lot of those in Gainesville. Rick Spielman, Brady Quinn here, joining us here on HQ to talk about the top QB prospects and their pro days. Of course, you can hear Rick alongside Ryan Wilson on their podcast With the First Pick. The guys are live 3 times a week, every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern. You can watch live on the NFL on CBS YouTube channel, or of course, you can download, listen wherever you find your pods and scan that QR code.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.